High Chancellor Vexara stood in the council war room, staring at battle reports that made no sense. The humans had been fighting the Vorthak for 3 months, and their methods got stranger with each engagement. They attacked a supply convoy using what? She asked her military advisor. Automated garbage trucks, Chancellor. General Mox replied, his 4 arms gesturing helplessly. They loaded old colony ships with trash and crashed them into the enemy formation. But the ships were also broadcasting fake distress signals and children's music at maximum volume. Did it work? Perfectly. The Vorthak fleet spent 2 hours trying to figure out why anyone would use nursery rhymes as psychological warfare. By the time they adapted, the real human attack force had destroyed their supply depot. Vexara sat down heavily in her chair. As leader of the Galactic Council, she had seen many wars. She understood strategy, tactics, and military doctrine, but the humans fought like they were making it up as they went along. "Show me the latest engagement," she ordered. The holographic display showed a recent battle near the Keth system. Lieutenant Commander Bayek Sohyun had pioneered a new type of warfare called ghost ship. Tactics. Her team would take damaged human vessels and fill them with automated systems that broadcast false signals. The ghost ships would pretend to be damaged Vorthak vessels calling for help. When enemy fleets arrived to assist, they would find human fighters hiding inside fake debris fields. But instead of immediately attacking, the humans would often just wait. They sat there for 8 hours doing nothing, General Mox explained. The Vorthak kept scanning for threats that weren't there. Their stress levels increased to dangerous levels because they couldn't understand why the humans weren't attacking. Psychological warfare, Vexara realized. More than that, they're teaching the Vorthak to fear things that don't exist. The door to the war room opened and Dr. Zine entered with a datapad full of reports. She had been studying human tactics for weeks, trying to understand their methods. "Chancellor, I think I know why the humans are so effective," she said. "It's not just their weapons or tactics. It's their entire approach to conflict." She activated a display showing human battle communications. Unlike Council military channels, which were formal and precise, human communications were chaotic and emotional. "Listen to this." Dr. Zine played an audio recording from a recent battle. "Jung, your ship is on fire. I know, isn't it awesome? Did you just ram a Vorthak cruiser with a mining ship? It seemed like a good idea at the time." "Are you insane?" "Probably. Want to try it?" Vexara listened in amazement. The humans talked like they were enjoying themselves in the middle of deadly combat. They celebrated successful retreats as much as victories. They seemed to view war as a challenging game rather than a life-or-death struggle. "They're not just fighting the Vorthak," Dr. Zine explained. "They're having fun doing it. That's something the Vorthak intelligence cannot understand or adapt to." General Mox pulled up tactical reports. The Vorthak have tried to counter human strategy 612 times. Every adaptation fails because the humans immediately switch to something completely different. Like what? Last week, Dr. Park's team released a new biological agent. Instead of attacking Vorthak biosystems, it made them itchy. The Vorthak ships began scratching themselves against asteroids to relieve the irritation. Their formation discipline collapsed because they couldn't concentrate on fighting. Vexara rubbed her temples. "So we're winning this war because the humans made the enemy itchy." "Among other things, yes." The reports kept coming. Engineer Kim had developed weapons that deliberately malfunctioned in creative ways. A missile that split into smaller missiles that split into even smaller missiles that eventually turned into party balloons. Energy weapons that fired random colors instead of deadly beams. Plasma cannons that shot soap bubbles. "Do any of these weapons actually work?" Vexara asked. "That's the brilliant part," Dr. Zine replied. "They don't need to work. The Vorthak waste so much energy trying to defend against fake threats that they become vulnerable to real attacks." A communication alert sounded. Admiral Choi's face appeared on the main screen, calling from her flagship somewhere in the outer systems. "Chancellor, we need to discuss something important," Choi said. "The Vorthak have requested a meeting." "A meeting?" Vexara was shocked. The Vorthak had never attempted communication beyond demands for surrender. "They want to negotiate," Choi continued. Their hive mind sent a formal diplomatic message asking for terms of peace. The war room fell silent. In 6 months of brutal fighting, the Vorthak had never shown any interest in anything except total conquest. Now they wanted to talk. "What are their terms?" General Mox asked. "They're offering to give humanity a place in their empire. Protection, technology, territory, All we have to do is stop fighting and help them conquer the rest of the galaxy. Vixara felt her blood run cold. They're trying to turn the humans against us. It gets worse, Admiral Choi said. They're specifically asking why humans fight for species they've never met. Their hive mind cannot understand the concept of helping strangers. Dr. Zine pulled up psychological profiles of Vorthak behavior. They're a collective intelligence that only values efficiency and survival. The idea of risking your life for others makes no sense to them. What did you tell them? Vixara asked. Admiral Choi smiled grimly. Captain Lee handled the response personally. Would you like to hear it? The recording began with Captain Lee's voice, calm and steady despite speaking to the galaxy's most dangerous enemy. To the Vorthak hive mind, Lee began, "Thank you for your generous offer. We're flattered that you think we're worth recruiting. However, we must decline. We didn't sleep for 800 years just to wake up as someone else's servants. We came to the stars to build something better than what we left behind. That means protecting people who can't protect themselves. You ask why we fight for strangers. It's simple. Today they're strangers. Tomorrow they might be friends. Next week they might be family. The day after that, they might be the ones protecting our children. You see the galaxy as resources to be harvested. We see it as a neighborhood to be protected. You calculate efficiency. We calculate hope. So here's our counteroffer. Leave. Go back to whatever dark corner of space you came from. Find another galaxy to terrorize, because this one is taken. If you choose to continue this war, understand that you're not just fighting humans. You're fighting everyone we've decided to care about. And humans have a bad habit of caring about people we've never met. We look forward to your response. Try not to make it boring." The recording ended. Vixara stared at the screen, trying to process what she had just heard. A species that had been asleep for centuries had just told the galaxy's most feared enemy to go home. "How did the Vorthak respond?" she asked. "They attacked our forward positions with everything they had," Admiral Choi replied. "We lost 2 ships, but we stopped them cold. They're regrouping now, but something's different." "Different how?" "They're hesitating. Making mistakes. Their perfect coordination is breaking down. I think Lee's message confused their hive mind." Dr. Zine nodded. "The Vorthak intelligence operates on logical principles. They can't understand why humans would choose to fight for abstract concepts like friendship and hope. It's causing errors in their decision-making process," General Mox added. "Our intelligence reports show increasing disagreement within their command structure." Vixara looked around the war room at the faces of her advisors. For the first time since the invasion began, she saw something she had almost forgotten. Confidence. "Chancellor," Admiral Choi said from the screen, "we're planning a major offensive against their main fleet. We could use Council support. What do you need?" "Nothing complicated. Just trust us to fight this war our way, and maybe warn your people that our methods are going to get even stranger." Vixara authorized the support without hesitation. The humans had already achieved something that months of traditional warfare had failed to accomplish. They had made the Vorthak afraid. As the communication ended, she turned to her advisors. "I want full military support for the human fleet. Whatever they need, wherever they need it." "Chancellor," General Mox asked, "do you really think they can win?" Vixara looked at the reports scattered across her desk. Battle plans that looked like comedy routines, weapons designed to annoy rather than destroy, tactics that violated every principle of military science. "I don't know if they can win," she admitted, "but I know they've already changed everything. The Vorthak came here expecting to fight a logical enemy. Instead they found humans. Is that enough? We're about to find out." Commander An Taiyang stared at the Vorthak fleet through his ship's main screen. 50 enemy vessels hung in space like giant metal spiders, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with dark energy. Each one was larger than his converted colony ship and covered in weapons that could destroy planets. "Sir, they're scanning us," his weapons officer reported. "The Vorthak computers are analyzing our ship design and defensive capabilities." "Perfect," An said with a grin. "Let them analyze. They're about to get very confused." The human battle plan was unlike anything in military history. Instead of meeting the enemy with organized formations, the 13 colony ships had scattered across the system. They looked disorganized and panicked, like frightened civilians trying to escape. Admiral Choi's voice came over the communication system. "All ships begin Operation Madness on my mark. Remember, nothing we do should make sense to a logical enemy." An's ship, New Guangzhou, suddenly accelerated toward the Vorthak fleet at maximum speed. The enemy vessels responded exactly as predicted, moving to intercept what appeared to be a desperate ramming attack. "Sir, they're locking weapons on us," the tactical officer announced. "Good, wait for it." On watched as the distance closed. The Vorthak ships powered up their energy weapons, preparing to destroy the human vessel before it could reach them. "Now!" Unshouted New Guangzhou suddenly exploded, but instead of fire and debris, the ship released millions of pieces of scrap metal, old machinery, and random junk that had been loaded into cargo bays. The explosion was fake, created by emergency systems designed to make the ship look destroyed. The real ship was hidden inside the cloud of debris, its engines shut down and hull painted to look like wreckage. Around it, dozens of small fighter craft emerged from hidden launch bays, using the junk cloud as cover. The Vorthak computers tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Their sensors detected a destroyed ship, but also detected weapons fire coming from the debris field. Their logical programming couldn't understand how a destroyed vessel could still be fighting. Flight leader Yang Hyerin led her squadron of converted mining ships through the confusion. Instead of attacking the Vorthak hulls, which were heavily armored, her pilots targeted sensors and communication arrays with kinetic weapons. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy them," she told her pilots. "We just want to make them blind and confused." Her ship fired a salvo from its debris cannon, launching a cloud of metal scraps and old tools at incredible speed. The Vorthak point defense systems tried to shoot down the incoming projectiles, but there were too many random pieces for the computers to track. The scrap metal tore through sensor arrays and communication dishes. It wasn't enough to seriously damage the massive enemy ships, but it was enough to disrupt their perfect coordination. "Direct hit on enemy communications," one of Zhang's pilots reported. "They're trying to adapt their systems, but every piece of junk hit them differently." The Vorthak adaptive technology was designed to counter specific threats. When hit by energy weapons, it would develop better shields. When attacked by missiles, it would create better point defenses. But the human attack wasn't using specific weapons. It was using random garbage. Dr. Park's Biological Warfare Division chose that moment to launch their own surprise. Modified bacteria that had been developed from Earth organisms was released into space around the Vorthak ships. The bacteria couldn't survive in the vacuum of space under normal conditions. But these weren't normal bacteria. They had been modified with crystalline structures that allowed them to remain dormant until they contacted organic material. When the microscopic organisms reached the biomechanical hulls of the Vorthak ships, they came to life. Instead of trying to kill the alien tissue, they simply made it behave strangely. Vorthak weapons began firing at random targets. Their navigation systems started calculating flight paths to nowhere. Biomechanical sensors began reporting that they were detecting non-existent threats. "What's happening to their fleet?" Dr. Zine asked from her observation ship. "Controlled chaos," Dr. Park replied. "The bacteria aren't destroying their systems, just making them work incorrectly. Their computers can't adapt to random malfunctions." The Vorthak fleet tried to retreat and regroup, but their navigation systems were now unreliable. Some ships turned left when they meant to turn right. Others accelerated when they tried to brake. Commander An brought New Guangzhou out of the debris field, its hull scarred but intact. The fake explosion had worked perfectly. His ship opened fire with conventional weapons while the enemy was still trying to understand what had happened. "Sir, they're trying to communicate with each other," the communications officer reported. "But their signals are getting scrambled by the bacterial infection." The battle continued for 6 hours. The humans used every dirty trick they could think of. Ships pretended to surrender, then attacked when the Vorthak approached. Fighters launched clouds of reflective chaff that confused enemy sensors. Mining lasers were used to cut through armor in patterns that the adaptive systems couldn't predict. Engineer Kim's most ridiculous weapon proved surprisingly effective. The gravel gun fired handfuls of small rocks at high speed. The Vorthak computers tried to calculate defense algorithms for each individual rock, causing their processing systems to overload. "This is insane," Lieutenant Commander Baek So-yun muttered as she watched the battle unfold. "We're fighting with garbage and getting bacteria to confuse their computers. Is it working?" Admiral Choi asked. "Yes, but I have no idea why." The answer came from Dr. Park's analysis of captured Vorthak technology. Their adaptive systems are designed to counter logical threats. When they detect energy weapons, they adapt energy shields. When they see missiles, they adapt point defenses. But what happens when they can't categorize the threat? Captain Lee asked. They try to adapt to everything at once, Park explained. Their systems get confused and start making random changes. It's like trying to solve a math problem when someone keeps changing the numbers. The Vorthak fleet finally managed to retreat, but they left behind 3 damaged ships. For the first time since the invasion began, the enemy had been forced to withdraw from a battle. News of the human victory spread quickly through Council space. Species that had been preparing for extinction suddenly found hope. The Vorthak could be beaten even if the methods didn't make sense. How did you do it? High Chancellor Vexera asked during a video conference with the human commanders. We fought dirty, Captain Lee replied honestly. We used weapons that don't work properly, tactics that violate military doctrine, and strategies that hurt our own forces as much as theirs. That sounds inefficient, Vexera pointed out. Inefficiency is the point, Admiral Choi explained. The Vorthak are perfectly efficient. They can't understand or adapt to perfect inefficiency. The victory came at a cost. New Gwangju had suffered significant damage, and several human pilots had been lost when their fighters were overwhelmed. But the psychological impact was enormous. The galaxy's most advanced military force had been outfought by converted colony ships using scrap metal and modified bacteria. Commander An looked at the damage reports and smiled grimly. Sir, what's our next target? The Vorthak supply lines, Captain Lee replied. They're probably trying to figure out what went wrong. Let's not give them time to think. The human fleet disappeared back into the nebula, leaving behind confused enemy forces and renewed hope for the galaxy. For the first time in months, the Vorthak had faced an enemy they couldn't understand. In their hive mind, the alien intelligence struggled to process what had happened. Their perfect military machine had been defeated by chaos and randomness. For creatures that valued logic above all else, this was a terrifying new development. The humans had introduced something the Vorthak had never encountered before, the concept that sometimes the best strategy was to have no strategy at all. Captain Lee Jiho felt like his body was made of ice and fire at the same time. The cryogenic revival process always hurt, but 800 years of sleep made it worse. Every muscle ached as medical systems checked his vital signs and pumped stimulants into his bloodstream. Welcome back, Captain, the ship's computer said in a calm voice. Please remain still while we complete the revival process. Lee tried to speak, but his throat felt like sandpaper. A medical robot moved a tube to his lips and fed him warm liquid that tasted terrible, but made him feel more human. As feeling returned to his fingers, he began to remember why he was waking up. Status report, he managed to croak. All systems nominal, Captain. We have been in hibernation for 812 years, 7 months and 16 days. A council ship has contacted us with urgent information about a galactic threat. The memories came flooding back. Earth dying from pollution and war. The desperate construction of colony ships to carry humanity to the stars. The detection of something dangerous coming from outside the galaxy. The decision to hide in the dark and wait. How many are awake? Lee asked. Command staff on all 13 ships are being revived now. The general population remains in cryogenic sleep pending your orders. Lee slowly sat up on the medical table. Through the small window, he could see the other colony ships floating in the nebula like sleeping whales. Each ship carried 1 million people who had trusted their leaders to keep them safe during the long sleep. Put me through to the other captains, he ordered. One by one, the other ship commanders came online. Dr. Park Mira from New Busan looked tired but alert. Engineer Kim Do-won from New Incheon was already studying technical readouts on his screen. Admiral Choi Yuna from New Pyongyang appeared calm and ready for action. Everyone's awake? Lee asked. All 13 ships reporting in, Admiral Choi confirmed. Command crews are at full revival. What's our situation? Lee activated the communication link with Dr. Zeen's ship. The council archaeologist appeared on screen looking nervous but hopeful. She quickly explained the Vorthak invasion and the desperate state of galactic civilization. They've conquered half the galaxy in 6 months, Zeen concluded. Nothing can stop them. They adapt to every weapon, counter every strategy. Dr. Park studied the biological samples that Zeen had provided. Fascinating. This tissue shows characteristics of both organic and mechanical systems, but the adaptation is too perfect, too predictable. What do you mean? Zeen asked. Evolution works through random mutations and natural selection. This adaptation follows mathematical patterns. It's artificial, programmed. Engineer Kim looked up from the Vorthak ship schematics. Their technology is impressive, but it's built for efficiency. Everything optimized, nothing wasted. Very logical. Is that bad? Scene wondered. Only if your enemy is logical, too, Kim replied with a grin. What happens when logic meets chaos? Admiral Choi was studying the battle reports. The Council fights like a civilized military force. Organized formations, coordinated attacks, strategic retreats. The Vorthak have learned to counter all of that. So we fight differently, Lee said. The question is, do we have the right to ask 1 million sleeping people to wake up into a war they never agreed to fight? The captains looked at each other through their video links. They had all volunteered to lead these ships to make the hard decisions that would ensure humanity's survival, but this decision was bigger than anything they had planned for. We could run, Dr. Park said quietly. Take our people to the galactic rim, find empty worlds, build new colonies, and live knowing we could have helped save billions of lives? Kim asked. It's not our war, someone else pointed out. Admiral Choi leaned forward. But it will be our galaxy. If the Vorthak win here, they'll eventually find us. Better to fight them now while we have allies. Even if we fight, we might lose, Lee said. We're 13 colony ships against an empire that's conquered hundreds of worlds. We're also crazy humans who've been sleeping for 800 years and just woke up angry, Kim pointed out. That has to count for something. Lee made his decision. Wake everyone up. All ships, all colonists. But we tell them the truth. We explain the situation and give them a choice. Anyone who wants to leave can take their family to the rim worlds. Over the next 3 days, 1 million human beings emerged from cryogenic sleep. The colony ships buzzed with activity as people learned about the galaxy they had slept through. Most were shocked to discover that Earth had been contacted by aliens decades after their departure. Town halls were held on every ship. People argued, debated, and asked hard questions. Some wanted to flee to safety. Others demanded revenge against the Vorthak for threatening the peaceful galaxy their children would inherit. Captain Lee addressed the population of New Sol through the ship's communication system. I won't lie to you, he said. This enemy is dangerous. They're stronger than us, more advanced than us, and they've beaten every other species in the galaxy. So why fight? Someone called out. Because we're not every other species, Lee replied. We're humans. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars and our own stupidity. We built these ships when everyone said it was impossible. We slept for 800 years because we believed in tomorrow. The vote was held across all 13 ships. When the results came in, Lee wasn't surprised. Humans had always been stubborn about impossible odds. 97% voted to fight. The colony ships began transforming. Manufacturing systems that had been idle for centuries roared back to life. Mining equipment was converted into weapons. Hydroponics bays were turned into biological research labs. Children's playgrounds became training areas for zero-gravity combat. Dr. Park's team began developing biological weapons unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not diseases designed to kill, but organisms designed to confuse and disrupt. Bacteria that would make Vorthak biosystems behave unpredictably. Viruses that would cause their adaptive technology to adapt in wrong directions. Engineer Kim's people worked on kinetic weapons that violated every principle of modern warfare. Instead of precise guided missiles, they built systems that could launch thousands of random projectiles. Debris cannons that fired scrap metal. Gravel guns that shot handfuls of small rocks at incredible speeds. Admiral Choi coordinated with the other ship commanders to develop tactics that no military academy would teach. Fake retreats that turned into ambushes. Suicide runs that were actually elaborate tricks. Battle plans that changed randomly in the middle of fights. The Vorthak learned from patterns, she explained to her officers. So we don't use patterns. We make it up as we go along. Lieutenant Commander Baek So-hyun, one of Choi's tactical officers, raised her hand. Admiral, with respect, that sounds completely insane. Good, Choi replied. If it sounds insane to us, imagine how it will sound to them. As the human fleet prepared for war, Dr. Zine watched in amazement. The Council's finest scientists worked for decades to develop new weapons. The humans were creating impossible technologies in a matter of days. How are you doing this so fast? She asked Dr. Park. Because we're not trying to make perfect weapons, Park replied. We're trying to make weapons that don't make sense. That's much easier. The 13 colony ships began moving toward the battle zone. Behind them, They left the nebula where humanity had slept for centuries. Ahead of them lay an enemy that had never lost a battle. But as Captain Lee watched his people prepare for war, he felt something he hadn't experienced in 800 years. Hope. Not because they were stronger than the Vorthak, but because they were different. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when logic met chaos, when efficiency faced stubbornness, and when an unstoppable force encountered an unmovable species that was too crazy to know when to quit. Dr. Zene's ship drifted through the Widow's Veil Nebula, its sensors barely able to see through the thick clouds of gas and dust. She had been searching for 3 weeks, following corrupted star charts and fading energy signatures. Her crew was tired and their supplies were running low. "Doctor, we're picking up something strange," her pilot, Lieutenant Kex, called from the front of the ship. "There's a power signature ahead, but it's old. Really old." Zene moved to the sensor station and studied the readings. The signature was weak but steady, like something had been running on minimal power for centuries. "Set course for the signal. And be careful. We don't know what we'll find." As they moved deeper into the nebula, more signals appeared on their screens. First one, then 5, then a dozen. The readings showed massive objects floating in the darkness, each one several kilometers long. "Are those ships?" Kex whispered. "If they are, they're bigger than anything in the Council fleet," Zene replied. Her hands shook as she worked the controls. After weeks of searching, she might have actually found the lost human fleet. The first ship they encountered was a massive cylinder covered in strange markings. Ancient Earth writing covered its hull, spelling out words in a language the Council computers could barely translate. New Sol was painted in faded letters along the side. "Look at the size of it," the navigator gasped. "It's a floating city." More ships appeared as they continued through the nebula. 13 massive vessels hung in space like sleeping giants. Each one was different in design but clearly built by the same species. The ships had been modified over the years, with extra armor and weapon systems added to their hulls. "They've been here the whole time," Zene realized. 800 years just waiting in the dark. She tried to contact the ships, but there was no response. The hulls showed signs of damage from centuries in space, but their power cores were still active. Whatever the humans had built, it was designed to last. "Doctor, I'm reading life signs," Kex reported. "Millions of them. But they're strange. The biosignatures are too slow, like they're barely alive." "Cryogenic sleep," Zene said. "They're hibernating." She had read about the human long sleep protocol in the ancient records. The entire species had put itself into frozen sleep, waiting for the right time to wake up. As they moved closer to the largest ship, automated systems suddenly activated. Lights flickered on across the hull and a transmission began broadcasting in ancient Earth language. "Unknown vessel. You are approaching the Terra Colonial Fleet. State your purpose or withdraw immediately." Zene quickly activated the translation system. "This is Dr. Zene of the Galactic Council. We need to speak with your leaders. The galaxy is under attack." There was a long pause. Then the voice returned, now speaking in Council Standard. "The Council? Our records indicate that organization formed after our departure." "How long have we been sleeping?" 800 years, Zene replied. "Please, we need help. An alien force called the Vorthak is destroying everything." Another pause. "Stand by. We are waking command staff." Lights began appearing across all 13 ships as systems that had slept for centuries came back online. Zene watched in amazement as the massive vessels slowly awakened. Docking bays opened, weapons powered up, and communication arrays extended. Hours passed before a human voice came over the radio. "This is Captain Lee Jiho of the colonial ship New Sol. Doctor, I need you to explain what's happened to our galaxy." Zene spent the next day briefing the human captain on 8 centuries of galactic history. She told him about the Council, the hundreds of species that had joined together, and the peace that had lasted for thousands of years. Then she told him about the Vorthak. "Show me the battle recordings," Captain Lee requested. Zene transmitted video files from recent battles. The recordings showed Vorthak ships tearing through Council fleets like they were made of paper. The alien vessels adapted to every weapon, learned from every tactic, and never showed mercy. "Interesting," Lee said after reviewing the data. "They fight like machines. Perfect coordination, logical responses, no wasted effort. Our best tacticians can't find any weaknesses," Zene admitted. "They adapt too quickly. Every strategy fails within hours." "That's because you're fighting them like civilized beings," Lee replied. But these Vorthak aren't civilized. They're predators, and predators have weaknesses. Over the following days, more humans began waking up. Dr. Park Mira, a biologist, studied samples of Vorthak technology that Zine had brought. Engineer Kim Do-won examined the alien ship designs. Admiral Choi Yuna reviewed battle tactics with her command staff. The Vorthak are too perfect, Captain Lee explained to his officers. They adapt to logical threats and respond to predictable tactics. But what happens when they face something completely illogical? Dr. Park had been working on the Vorthak biosamples for 3 days straight. These organisms are fascinating, she said. They're part machine, part living tissue. But they follow very specific genetic patterns. If we could disrupt those patterns, could you create a biological weapon? Admiral Choi asked. Maybe, but not the kind you're thinking of. The Vorthak would adapt to any normal virus or bacteria. We'd need something completely unexpected. Engineer Kim had been studying the Council's weapon technologies. Your people fight with energy weapons and guided missiles, he told Zine. Very advanced, very precise. But what about simple kinetic weapons? Just chunks of metal moving really fast? That's primitive, Zine protested. Modern shields can stop kinetic projectiles easily. Can they stop 1,000,000 kinetic projectiles all at once? Kim asked with a smile. As the humans continued to wake up and study the situation, they began to form a plan. It wasn't like anything the Council had tried. It was chaotic, dangerous, and completely insane. You want to fight the most advanced enemy in galactic history with scrap metal and modified bacteria? Zine asked. Not just fight them, Captain Lee replied. We want to confuse them. The Vorthak adapt to threats they understand, but they can't adapt to threats that don't make sense. Admiral Choi pulled up star charts showing the current battle lines. The Council forces are falling back toward the core worlds. We have maybe 4 months before the Vorthak reach Nexus Prime. Then we better get moving, Lee said. Wake everyone up. All 13 ships, all 1,000,000 colonists. It's time to go to war. Captain, Zine said quietly. You don't understand. This isn't your fight. You could just fly away, find a safe place to build your colonies. Lee looked at her with tired but determined eyes. Doctor, we've been asleep for 800 years. We dreamed of a future where our species could live in peace among the stars. If we let the Vorthak destroy that future, what was the point of sleeping so long? As the massive human fleet began to move, Zine sent a message back to the Council. I found them. They're coming to help, and I think they might actually have a chance. Behind her, 13 colony ships that had slept for centuries began their journey toward war. The stars burned across the galaxy as the Vorthak Empire swept through space like a living nightmare. Their black ships moved through the darkness, each one as large as a moon and covered in writhing metal that seemed alive. Where they passed, entire star systems went dark. Admiral Therex stood on the bridge of his flagship watching his home world die. The green forests and blue oceans of Zenthari Prime turned gray as Vorthak ships drained the life from everything they touched. His fleet of 300 ships had been cut down to 12 in just 3 hours of fighting. Admiral, our weapons have no effect, his communications officer reported. Every time we hit them, their armor changes. It learns from our attacks. Therex closed his 4 eyes and felt the weight of failure. The Galactic Council had trusted him to protect the Outer Rim territories. Now 27 worlds were ash and millions of beings were dead or enslaved. The Vorthak had appeared from the void between galaxies 6 months ago. No one knew where they came from or why they attacked. They simply arrived, conquered, and moved on. Their technology was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was part machine, part living tissue, and all nightmare. On Nexus Prime, the Council chambers erupted in panic. Representatives from hundreds of worlds shouted over each other in dozens of languages. The Vorthak were winning every battle and no one knew how to stop them. Order! Order! High Chancellor Vexara slammed her staff against the crystal floor. The noise echoed through the massive dome where the Council met. We must think clearly. Think clearly? Ambassador Krell of the Hive World stood up, his insect-like body trembling with fear. My people are being harvested for food. 20 billion souls consumed in a single day. The Vorthak adapt to everything we throw at them, added General Mox from the warrior clans. Energy weapons, kinetic missiles, plasma charges, they learn and counter within minutes. It's like fighting an enemy that gets stronger with every hit. Vexara looked around the chamber. Some of the greatest minds in the galaxy sat before her, and none had an answer. The Vorthak ships were too fast, too strong, and too smart. They fought like a single organism, perfectly coordinated and endlessly adapting. What about the old archives? A small voice spoke from the back of the chamber. It was Dr. Zine, the Council's chief archaeologist. The pre-contact records mention other species that fought differently. The archives are mostly corrupted, Vexara replied. Most species destroyed their old records when they joined the Council. Not all of them, Dr. Zine said, walking forward. Her blue skin was pale with exhaustion. She had been working without sleep since the attacks began. There are fragments, stories about a species that disappeared before the Council was formed. The chamber grew quiet. Even in their panic, the Council members were curious. Dr. Zine activated a holographic display that showed corrupted data files and partial star charts. They called themselves humans, she continued. The records are incomplete, but they were from a small world in the outer spiral. They had primitive technology but advanced space travel capabilities. Where are they now? General Mox demanded. If they could help us fight, why haven't we found them? Because they vanished, Dr. Zine said. 800 years ago, they launched massive colony ships toward the galactic edge. Then all contact stopped. Most believe they died in the void. Great, Krell muttered. So they're probably extinct. Maybe not, Dr. Zine pulled up more data. The fragments mentioned something about a long sleep protocol. The humans detected something approaching from outside the galaxy. They may have hidden themselves on purpose. Vexara studied the display. The data was old and broken, but it showed the approximate direction the human ships had traveled. What made them different? Why would they succeed where we fail? Dr. Zine hesitated. The records are disturbing. Humans apparently fought wars against their own species for thousands of years. They had a concept called total war, where they would completely destroy their enemies rather than accept defeat. Savages, someone whispered. Perhaps, Dr. Zine agreed, but effective savages. They also had something else. They refused to surrender. Even when facing impossible odds, they would keep fighting until they died. The Council chamber fell silent again. The idea of finding help from a primitive, violent species was not appealing, but as reports came in of more worlds falling to the Vorthak, desperate times called for desperate measures. How long would it take to find them? Vexara asked. Months, maybe years, Dr. Zine admitted. The coordinates are incomplete and we'd have to search a nebula cluster where sensors don't work well. We don't have years, General Mox said. At their current rate, the Vorthak will reach the inner worlds in 6 months. Then we need to buy time, Vexara decided. Dr. Zine, take a fast ship and find these humans. The rest of us will try to slow the Vorthak advance. As the Council members filed out to prepare their defenses, Dr. Zine remained behind to study the ancient records. The human data was strange and violent. They had fought with weapons that poisoned entire worlds. They had destroyed their own cities rather than let enemies capture them. They had even sent missions into their own star to prevent alien invasion. But they had also shown incredible loyalty to each other. Humans would sacrifice themselves to save strangers. They would fight hopeless battles to protect the weak. And according to the records, they had never ever given up completely. Crazy species, Dr. Zine muttered as she prepared for her mission. But maybe crazy is what we need. 3 days later, her ship left Nexus Prime, heading for the dark nebula where humanity might still sleep. Behind her, the galaxy continued to burn as the Vorthak pressed their attack. Every day brought new reports of fallen worlds and broken fleets. The Council's finest tacticians worked around the clock to find weaknesses in Vorthak technology. They found none. The enemy ships were perfect killing machines that learned from every encounter. Traditional warfare was useless against them. As Dr. Zine's ship entered hyperspace, she wondered if she was chasing ghosts. The humans might be dead. They might refuse to help. They might be too primitive to make a difference, but they were the only hope left. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, humanity might still be sleeping, waiting for a reason to wake up. The galaxy could only pray that when they opened their eyes, they would choose to fight.